As the holiday season is upon us, we all have to think about how do we give these gifts that we're giving, right? Gift bags are a great way to give gifts. I love nothing more than a cute gift bag, but even more than a cute gift bag is a fabric gift bag that's reusable. Oh my gosh, I can't even stand how cute this is. And you guys, it's totally reversible. So make sure you put cute fabric on the inside or the outside. I'm also thinking how you could totally make like the front of this different than the back. You could make a cute panel with applique. There's so much that you could do with this. But I was thinking this morning for some people that I'm giving some Antique Candle Co. candles to about a gift bag. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna make one. And this fits your candle perfectly. But in this tutorial, I'm gonna tell you exactly how to make the bag any size that you need. So you're not limited to just this size. I'm gonna tell you what you need to know. It's very easy. You can make them any size you want. So if you wanna make wine bags, bigger gift bags, smaller gift bags, whatever you need, watch this video. I'm gonna share everything with you. You can make this gift bag any size that you want to. Here's how you figure out what that looks like. We're gonna make a bag that is 7 by 9, 7 inches wide by 9 inches tall. So I've cut the lining pieces. I've got 2 pieces for the lining, and I've cut the front and the back. Okay, so we're gonna start with those. I've already attached fusible fleece because I'm gonna do some quilting. So what I'll do is I'll take the front or the back, however, and you can make these front panels any way you want. It doesn't have to be solid like this. And you're gonna take the back piece, and you can use, now fusible fleece is fusible on one side, so I've already ironed it on. And then you could use a basting spray, which is a temporary hold to attach the back. But honestly, if you just press this there, it just kind of sticks so that it will look like this before we start quilting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quilt all the layers. So the front panel, the back panel, and then the gusset, which is the sides and the bottom. So this is the outside. I've applied my fusible fleece already here. And then again, I'll take the lining. Quilt these however you want. I love to just do some fun straight line quilting, but if you want, you can quilt it any way you want, or you don't have to quilt it. It's your project. Do it however you want. So again, sides and back, sides and bottom, sorry, not sides and back. Now, how I got this measurement, I wanted my bag to be 4 inches wide, so I cut it 4 inches wide. So you take you have to do a little math, but it's simple math. The 2 sides, which is 9 plus 9 is 18, and then the bottom is 7, gives us 25. So let's get these quilted. To get ready for the quilting part, I'm gonna show you the tools that I use to make quilting super easy. I am just gonna do some simple straight line quilting here, nothing really fancy. So you need a marking pen of some sort. These I sell on my website if you need a good marking pen. I love these for marking fabric. It comes, you can either get just the pen or you can get the eraser duo. It's an air erase pen, which means it'll just disappear on you. But if you wanna remove the marks quicker, you can get the eraser and then be able to remove them as you need to and not wait for them to just disappear. So you're gonna need some sort of marking pen. You're gonna need some sort of straight edge ruler. And then I use this little attachment that I get on Amazon. I will link it in the comments for you. It's just a universal attachment depending on the foot of your machine. But this clips onto the presser foot, and this is a guide. So you can adjust this, and I'm gonna show you how it all works when we get over to the sewing machine. So yeah, I use this guide, and then I only have to draw 2 lines, and then I use the guide to follow the rest. Like I said, I'm doing simple straight line quilting. So I'm gonna start by marking from corner to corner. And you can mark however you want. I want a diamond print to be on here when I'm all done. So instead of marking every couple of, whether it's every inch, half inch, however far apart you want your quilting to be, you just mark the 2 spots, okay? And then I'm gonna show you how we use the guide along with that. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. These are the front and the back panels. And your quilting certainly does not need to match up on the sides and things like that. Don't worry, don't overcomplicate it. And then on this long piece, we're gonna just do, so I wanna check out, I want it to be about the same angle. So what I often will do is just continue that angle here. And it doesn't matter where on this piece you mark. So that's all I need to do. On each piece, you have 2 different markings, and those are going to be your starting points for the quilting. To attach this little gadgety guide thing here, I love it so much. I use this all the time for all of my straight line quilting. So all you do is unscrew from your presser foot and just leave that in there. You need to leave your presser foot in. Just open it enough to fit the guide in, and then close it back up. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now, there's a wing nut on the back here that you can adjust so that you can slide this over depending on how far apart you want your quilt lines to be. So when I take a look at this, just as an example here, so once I sew along the line that I drew, then I can decide, you know, do I want my lines a 1/2 inch apart, 3/4 of an inch, whatever it might be, but you set it and then you just leave it there. You never have to adjust it. And then I leave it there for all of the quilting that I'm about to do. I have pink thread on the top because I wanted the stitching to be pink, but I have white thread in the bobbin. And it doesn't matter how you decide what colors you want to use, totally up to you. So I've extended my stitch length to a 4. I don't have my guide set where I want it just yet. I'm going to do the first line. And so I'm just going to stitch right along that line. Super easy to follow. And remember, this line will disappear. Plus I have that eraser marker that I can use if I want it to disappear even faster. Okay, so we've got our first line. Now that is our new guideline that we're going to follow. So to do this, pull that out the back. So I'm going to say I probably want it about that far apart. I'm not measuring. It doesn't matter like the actual distance to me. I'm just gauging what I think will look the best. Because this is a smaller pattern, so I want my stitching to be a little bit closer together. So we're going to go right about there. So I'm going to tighten up that wing nut in the back. And then you want to make sure that this isn't down so far that it's pressing on your fabric. You just want to be able to watch it. So what I do is I line up where I'm going to sew over here, but then I watch the guide because I want to make sure that my line stays as straight as possible. Are my lines ever perfectly straight? No, I mess up. I just keep going because by the time you get it all quilted, you don't see any little bobbles or wobbles or crookedness. It's just not even visible. So there. And now we'll just continue the same way. We'll go all the way across. This eliminates having to mark your entire piece that you're quilting. You just use the guide and follow the last stitch that you did. So you'll go all the way across on this side, and then we have to do the other side. So we're done on this side. Now we just turn it around and we follow from the other end in the exact same manner that we did before. All right, so that side is completely quilted. Now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to start on this line and then quilt out both sides, and we're going to do that for the back, and then we're also going to do that for the bottom and the side pieces. All right, so here's what it looks like all done. That's the front and the back. You know, you can make this, oh gosh, both sides are so cute. But just simple diamonds, it adds so much to add in that quilting. It looks so good when you're done. But if you want, you can just wait and those lines will disappear. But this little eraser, I'm going to link this in the comments or down below in the description for you. You can buy this duo. Like I said, I have it on our website. Because sometimes I don't want to wait for the line to disappear. And you can just use this little eraser and it's gone. And it will not come back. I know sometimes heat erase pens, the Frixion ones, They come back sometimes. I've heard of horror stories of people using them and they work great. I use them for embroidery. I use them whenever that line will be covered up, the heat erase pens, but anytime you're marking on the front of something where it would be visible if the line were to come back, I use these Duo pens. They're by Soline and I love them. So if you're interested in grabbing them, like I said, I'll link them in the description for you. But now this panel's done. So we're going to repeat that process with the other panel and then the bottom part as well. So we just start on our lines that we drew. And then we use our guide. And I haven't adjusted the guide. I left it in the exact same spot so that all of our quilting will match up and be the same distance for the entire project that we're doing. Once you're done with your quilting, make sure your pieces are still the right size. Square them up if needed, but they should be good to go. So then what we're going to do is we need to find the center of our bottom. So I'm just going to fold it in half and just make a crease there. And then mark it with the marking pen. I'm going to just mark on each side. Then you're going to find the center of each panel and just mark the bottom center here. Okay, and then on this one, same thing. And for this one, because I'm using the same fabric, it doesn't matter which is front or back. Now, if you did some sort of decorative front panel, which you could certainly do, there are so many different ways you could do this. You know, just know which is your front or back. Honestly, it doesn't matter too much. Okay, so then you're going to match up those marks. And then just go ahead and pin along that bottom edge. And then you're going to stitch that on and you're going to stop 1/4 of an inch before the edge. What I like to do so that I'm not just guessing is I just mark it with my marking pen. That way you know where to start and stop. Make sure you put your fabric right sides together, and what that means is this fabric and this fabric, these are the right sides, so they're facing each other so that when this is sewn, it will look like that. Don't sew over your pins. Don't do as I do. Sometimes I just forget. Okay, so go ahead, back stitch at the beginning and the end, but make sure you're leaving a little bit of room. That way, when you turn this to sew up the other side, it turns freely and you have room. I'm just going to pin right there in that corner so that everything stays where you want it. And then add just a couple more pins along the edge. And don't worry about this being a little bit extra. That's okay. We'll take care of that later. And then you're going to sew. You're going to start where you left off at that 1/4 of an inch. This is going to be the top, so make sure you back stitch when you get there as well. You should always back stitch at the beginning and the end of each of your stitches there. Now we'll do the same thing over on the other side, where you just match up that edge. So that is part of our bag. So now we're going to add the other side, and we're going to start the same way by matching up that little mark on the bottom here with the mark on the center. We'll do it the same way, where you start on the bottom and you stop 1/4 of an inch before the edge is there. I'm gonna guess this on this one. I'm not gonna mark it. You can mark it. It's better if you do. I'm rolling the dice. Okay. So start in. And then we'll do the same thing here. Well, we'll match it up in the corner. Sometimes I just pin both sides. Just because sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason. All right, now stitch up that other side. It's gonna start to look like a really cute gift bag. Okay, now we've got it put together. Now remember I said don't worry about this excess here. We're gonna trim that off so it's nice and even. All right, what I'm doing, I'm gonna fold in the bottom and I'm going to match up the bottom edges. And it also, it just kind of pulls the sides in. So I'm just folding it down like this. And I'm just gonna line up my ruler and I'm just trimming off that excess along that top edge. That way it'll make your top nice and even all the way around. Next up is adding the binding and the handles to finish this off. So what we're gonna do, so you wanna take and cut some strips of binding. 2.5 inches wide is what I like to work with. Some people use 2 1/4. And then just bring it to your iron, fold it in half and press. I like to make mine a bit longer than the 25 inches that we did for the gusset, because you're gonna have some corners that you're mitering. And then I do go through and trim off any like loose threads, which you have a bunch because of the quilting. So just go ahead, once you've sewn it all together, trim off any excess that's getting in your way. You don't have to be too meticulous about this. You'll come to it as you're sewing, and most of this will get covered up in the binding. So to start, what I like to do is just fold this down so that you don't have any exposed raw edges. Fold it in half again, close that back up. And you can press that if it's easier, but I'm going to just attach it. You know what? You don't need to do that part. You don't need to worry about the raw edges because the top binding will cover that up. Never mind. Okay, so start over here. Fold this in half. And you can go ahead and you can clip or just start sewing. And we're gonna sew, we're gonna attach it on first, and then we'll fold it over and enclose the edges. Right, so what I like to do is just lay this down, line up the edge of your binding with the raw edge of your bag, still using 1/4 inch seam allowance, and start stitching. You can pin or clip this if it's easier for you. I just don't. I don't need to here. Now when you get to this corner, we're gonna miter it so it comes around nicer, okay? So what that means is you get to the corner, lift up your presser foot, pivot off the edge, and sew off. And I'm just folding this bag down and out of my way is what I'm doing. So then you take the corner, fold it back, and then fold it forward on itself and sew along the bottom. And again, just make sure you're not getting any excess in the way there. And again, at the corner, lift up your foot, sew off. And we're going to, again, miter this corner. This gives you enough room when you go flip it over to the other side. You get a nice, cleaner corner this way. And then you're going to back stitch at the top edge of the bag and trim off your excess. And you're going to bring this around. And you can clip or glue based, whatever you want. What you're going to do is bring this all the way around. When you get down to your, what I'm going to do is I want to do the sides and then the bottom. That way they lay nice and even. Just going to stitch that down in place. And you're just stitching right along the edge of the binding. And I just move it along with my hand as I go. And I'm going to sew right to the bottom edge of the bag itself. And let it fold off. See how it kind of folds? That's from your miter that you did. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to start at the end of the bag. I'm using about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here, not much at all. I'm just sewing along the edge of the binding to make sure that I'm catching it in the stitching. Now, go to your bottom. See, now you have 2 really nice corners here. So then just go to the bottom, and I'm just going to clip this just to make sure it stays where I want it as I'm sewing. I'm only going to use like 2 because I won't need one at the beginning. I'll hold that with my hand till I get it under the needle. And I'm just folding the other part of the bag like underneath. So it's just, make sure it's not under your needle when you're sewing. So there's your binding. And then if you have any loose threads sticking out, just trim those off. So we are going to do the same steps on the other side. So add your binding and then miter each corner, and then you're going to just simply flip it back over and sew it into place. And then we will do the top edge. I'm going to take my 2 pieces of scrap binding and I'm going to combine them to make 1 piece for the top. Together, as I'm showing you here, put the one side with your right sides are together, lay them down, and then sew off at a 45-degree angle. So essentially, you're sewing from corner to corner. Then trim, leaving about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to bring this back over to my ironing board and make sure everything lines up nice. And I'm going to flatten this seam. I'm going to press the seam open and then I'll sew it. I'm going to press this seam open and then I will make sure that my seam down the center lines up. For the handles, you can use fabric, you can use ribbon, you can use webbing, whatever you have on hand, whatever you want to use for the handles is fine. So what I do, I have this 1-inch wide webbing. I cut mine at 15 inches long, depending on how long you want your handles. I want them to be on the outside. So we're going to turn this right side out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pin them in place at the top. And then you want to make sure there's no twists in there. And I'm eyeballing this to make sure the distance is about the same. You can measure and be more precise if you want. I'm about 1/2 inch away from the edges. Looks pretty even. And then what I'm going to do is just flip this over and attach the other side. And I'm going to make sure everything is matching up. So my seams are matched up and where these handles go is going to be matched up. And I'm going to baste the handles in place first. So I'm just going to bring this to the sewing machine here and I'm just going to stitch them in place so I can take the pins out. You don't want the pins in there when you're trying to add the binding over the top of everything. Okay, so then I'm just going to put that under the presser foot and stitch back and forth 1 or 2 times. You want the handles to be secure. So just back and forth like that. And you can either do this on the inside or the outside. The outside, you can see the handle and where it is. You just have to make sure to pull the rest of the bag down below your needle so you don't accidentally stitch something you shouldn't. And then we have to play with our friend Jack and rip out those seams. That's okay though. So those are nice and secure. Now for this binding, what I did, because you're going to see the edges of this binding, unlike the other edges where you could leave it raw because it's going to be tucked in. So what I like to do at the beginning is fold this over, and you don't need all that bulk in there. So I'm going to trim off, leaving about 1/4 inch in there. So I fold it, I press it with the iron. So you still start with it folded in half. Start in the middle. Pin or clip this if you want. But what we're going to do to start with this is we're going to make a pocket. We're going to make a binding pocket. So let's get this under our needle and then we'll make sure we have nothing caught in there that we don't want. Okay, so I like to put it under the foot and put my needle down. That's going to hold everything in place while you shift and move things out of your way. Go ahead and stitch, back stitch. Now open the pocket, okay? So open your binding, stitch down just beyond the handle. You're stitching down 2 to 3 inches. And the entire time we've been maintaining that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Keep that in mind. Now go ahead, close that back up, and then start stitching where you left off. So now what I do is I'm sewing on the top of a bag like this. I always have my needle end in the down position, so the needle's always staying down because that holds things in place for you so that your bag and things aren't shifting out and coming out from under that presser foot. And then with my fingers, which you can't see because they're under here, I'm making sure that this excess fabric isn't getting caught up in here as I'm attaching the binding. So we're just going to slide it out of the way and line it up as we go. And you're just doing little sections at a time. So see here, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop. And then I pull the rest of this bag forward, making sure nothing is under that needle that shouldn't be there. Pull a little bit more forward, and you just continue to do this all the way around the top edge. Okay, now we're getting back to the pocket. So we're almost to the beginning, okay? So I'm gonna sew. Okay, so I've met up with the binding. So what we wanna do is tuck the raw edge of this into the pocket we made. So you can see I started sewing right here. So I've got enough room to open it a little bit. I'm going to cut this at an angle, less bulk that way. So I'm cutting it so I have enough of a tail to tuck in so you don't see those raw edges, but it doesn't go beyond where I started sewing. So I have room here because then we're gonna stitch the rest of that down. We're gonna stop at that starting point. So go ahead and just stitch your pocket closed. So that's what that looks like, okay? So now we've attached our binding on that side. Now we have to do it on the other side. Flip it over the same way we did before. And again, you can use pins or clips here. What I want to do now is I'm gonna fold this in and I'm going to clip because I want it to stay put. The biggest thing is you're just covering up that raw edge. So I'm going to get started. I haven't clipped by any of the handle yet because I'm making a decision in my head as we're doing this. So I'm clipping all the way around, avoiding the handles. And here's why. Because I think I want to fold my handle up. And I'm trying to decide the easiest way to do that. Because I would fold it up. That way when I go around and finish the stitching, I can capture that in there. So I'm going to clip the handles up towards the binding so that they want to naturally lift up. Hey, this seam I was worried about, it's totally going to be covered up then by the handle. You don't have to do your handles this way. You can leave them down if you want to. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch in the ditch to finish this off so that it stays nice and neat along the front. And what that means, the ditch is where your binding was sewn to your bag. So this little area where those two pieces meet, that's the ditch. So I'm thinking as I'm doing all of this. Now, glue basting works better than clips do. But for this, I think it'll be fine because what I'm thinking about is you just want to make sure that your binding is going down far enough that when you stitch in the ditch, it's grabbing this on the other side. The hardest part is getting it under that foot and getting started. Yeah, I've got my needle is going to go down right in between the binding and the binding fabric and the bag fabric. Because then on the front side, it's not even going to be visible. And again, pull the bag forward as you work around, constantly checking that there's nothing in the way of your needle. Now here, I'm gonna sew right over this part of the handle, and because I have pink thread in there, it's gonna match just fine. I think it'd be really cute too to use the binding fabric as your handle fabric. And if you want, I would add a little lightweight interfacing if you're making the handles out of the fabric strips. It would be really cute. But interfacing is going to give it a little bit of bulk and sturdiness. Nothing super heavy, just a nice light to mid-weight interfacing would be great for that. And I typically gravitate towards fusible interfacings because I just think they're easier to work with. There are times I only need a sew in. It's for usually other projects though. But also use what you have at home. If you have an interfacing at home that will work, just use that. That's the great thing about sewing, you know, crafts and things, handmade items like this versus clothing. Like clothing, you have to be a little bit more precise and particular about what you're using, but when you're doing things like this, you can just use what you have. Okay, we're at where we started. You can see it's stitched in place all the way around. Looks great. And now our handles just naturally want to come up. This is the cutest little gift bag I've ever seen in my whole life. Can't even handle the cuteness. And you guys, if you want, it could totally be reversible. Look at when you turn it the other way. I don't mind the binding on the outside at all. Oh my gosh. So you just made a reversible tote bag. Now you can make this again, like I talked about at the beginning, you can make this any size that you need for your gift, but my idea was like, how great would it be for like a candle and then some other little goodies? And it's something that people can reuse. This size is great because I think right away, like, oh my gosh, if somebody needs to take a lunch with them or do a little bit of shopping for smaller items where you don't need a great big tote bag, it's small, but as a gift bag, oh my gosh, I think it's adorable. I hope you will make a bunch of these. You can get started now. That way you have a bunch ready for the holiday season as things come up, as you have to, you know, be like, I need a teacher gift. I mean, who wouldn't love something in a bag this cute? And then when you throw in the Antique Candle Co. candle, you guys know I'm a huge fan. Huge fan of Antique Candle Co. What's this one? Oh, Spiced Orange. Oh my gosh. Yeah, put the candle in there. Some Mike and Jen's hot cocoa. If you don't know what that is, look them up. Best hot cocoa you'll ever drink. Some candy, little candy cane hanging out the top. Oh my gosh. All right. When you make your bags, please tag me. I want to see them. This is just going to be such a great add-on for Christmas gift giving. I think you're going to have so much fun making them, but tag me. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I don't want you to miss out on any of the fun projects we have in store for you, especially for the holiday season. But if you have any questions, send me a message. I'm happy to help. And like I said, tag me. I want to see what you make.